Hey, it's Dave Brion, DBJ, back again, and we're going to talk about cinematic role playing and reading between the dice. Now, one thing that I've never heard anyone talk about on so many of the podcasts and the role playing game forums are mediocre die rolls. Taking D20, for example, it's rolling anything from an 8 to a 13. Very little variation in there, or you make an exceptionally high roll. You roll a 20, you want a crit, you grab the damage dice, you do 2 points. Or the opposite. Hey, I barely make the roll, I needed to roll a 13 or more, I roll a 14, I roll mediocre dice, or maybe I do massive damage, but I barely make it, or I need to roll a 13 or over and I roll a 12. What happens? And a lot of times in the games, yeah, we focus on like the critical failures and the critical successes, but there's a lot to be done and to be said for those mediocre rolls. And that's where I like to fail forward. It's been called in many podcasts I've listened to, and some games where they actually emphasize this, and it's like failing forward, where yes, your character is successful, or maybe your character failed, but it's something but. It's a failure but, a success but. And these are things where, we all have really big butts, haha, but where you can really start to develop an image, a cinematic picture of what's going on. It's the idea of a knight stabbing a dragon, but the sword gets stuck into the dragon scales. Maybe the dragon barely feels the poke, but now you have added tension. Does the knight hold on to the sword while the dragon flies away towards the city down the hill? Or does another character have a great idea and wrap a rope around the dragon's tail and hold on for dear life or something? These are little things that can happen in the game where a player is attacked by a horde of creatures and hacks his battle axe into the ogre, killing it, but that battle axe is now stuck in its ribs. Or a person's fighting so many goblins that there's piles of goblins around them and they're losing their footing on top of the goblins. And that doesn't always have to be represented by successes and by fumbles or crits. It's those boring dice. It's those die rolls that are just like, add some flavor to it. Add some color. Just describe the blood pouring down the blades. Describe the energy in the room. The mage that casts the spell that catches a bunch of a horde of creatures on fire as they run for it to try to put the fire out, and their friends are helping them or ignoring them and looting their own friends' bodies as things happen. Which brings me to a second part, which is cinematic role-playing. And I'm going to do a number of these related to cinematic role-playing. This is just going to be part one. And part one is ignore how you get there. Just worry about the end result. So if the end result is player A wants to take out NPC B, or player A wants to take out creature B. I want to shoot it with my arrow. I want to hit it with a sword. I want to bash it with a shield or something like that. How they get there is just description. It's just flavor. It's special effects. There's nothing to it. You don't need 18 rolls to get there. For example, we got Ariana the Knight, and she wants to. She's facing up against 2 hobgoblins, and she wants to kill him, okay? The boring thing is grab some dice, roll to hit, you do 3 points of damage to the first one. Oh my God. If I have to game master or dungeon master a game where I've got 50 rolls where someone goes, I roll a 3, I do 4 points of damage all night long, I might as well just stay home. I want to hear that visceral action, the blood and the sweat, the exhaustion, the rage that these characters have. And if the player playing Ariana says, I roll forward, snatching my sword off the ground, slicing the one hobgoblin from behind, and pointing at the other hobgoblin and say to it, leave now or you will meet your maker. You don't need to roll, okay, tumble forward. Oh, you have to spend an action to pick the sword up. You can't strike it from behind because you don't have the ability to flank like a rogue does. And okay, if the rules get in the way of an awesome scene, you use the rules instead of establishing a very dramatic, cinematic scene, and you just cut the energy off just because you need an extra die roll, dude, you are not game mastering and DMing correctly. I'm not talking about giving people advantages that they should not have. If all the character wants to do is kill a hobgoblin, how they get there does not matter. Now, of course, let's say you have Dougal the Cutthroat. That's another example I'll be using in this video series. Dougal the Cutthroat, same hobgoblins. Okay, comes around. He's got two. He's got to face off against one. So Dougal says, "Well, I distract one by pulling a knife from my belt and throwing at him, knowing that he's going to block. And when he raises his arm to block, I take my short sword and slice his belly open." Here we go. Okay, you don't get two actions. He's not going to be distracted. You have to make one roll. Do you have the feint skill? Here we go again with trying to find 18 die rolls to get one action. And as a game master or DM, here's what happens when you start asking players to make multiple die rolls. Multiple die rolls means multiple chances to fail. And if you instill in your players multiple chances to fail, they will be less risk adverse. It's called analysis paralysis. They will analyze and super analyze every situation until they narrow it down to the bare facts, which is why, like in Pathfinder and I'll say D&D 4 and 3.5, where you just have these builds of characters, and they're cookie cutter builds. They're the same feats, they're the same things, all taken together. So all the characters basically a one-trick pony, and that's all they do because they know they've eliminated all these extraneous possible chances of failure to exist in your game. And if you create, as a game master DM, you create those situations to force players that being a one-trick pony is an advantage in your game. And it doesn't allow the ability to shine past that. And when you see a great action movie, like, you watch all the Lord of the Rings, when you see the main character's got a longsword, and instead what he does is he hacks at the leg of a guy, and then when that guy falls, stabs him in the chest. Those aren't two separate roles and trying to, whatever. That's just flair. You know the hero's going to take this guy out, so if you add that extra flair, hey, he knocks him in the jaw with the pommel of his sword, and then turns him around and slits his throat with the longsword, and then uses his body as a shield to take his longsword and throw it in the chest of another guy, whatever. If you're searching for ways to make people fail, they'll never ever do those things. So as a game master and DM, again, all you need to do is search for the end result. If the end result is simple, the complexity to get there does not matter. Just let it happen. Let it flow naturally and organically. Of course, within the character build and within your game. This does not necessarily mean it has to be foolishly cinematic. It can be very gritty and can be very, quote-unquote, realistic. Although I hate that word when you have a world filled with elves and dragons. But if you want it gritty and you want it very visceral, it's still possible to make it cinematic because you want to have that draw of as the stakes get higher and higher and higher. And lastly, I will say that you should create a safety net because in order to create cinematic adventures, the players will be engaged in things that, don't really make sense. Is there a reason to do a tumble roll over a table and then pick up a dagger and throw it into the throat of a bad guy when it would just be simpler just to stay out of range? Sure. Would it make sense, not to jump out of a 60-foot window to land in a bale of hay and then jump on a horse and ride away? Yes. But if you want to create cinematic adventures as a game master or DM, you need to create a safety net. And that safety net basically means that if the characters are engaging in dramatic, cinematic action, there's a safety net that you as a game master will not take advantage of that and hurt them, either physically with die rolls or take away some of their advantages or make them look stupid simply because you are short-circuiting this great cinematic event. Okay? You want to create that safety net that says, yes, as the quick thief or rogue, yes, you can backflip and jump around and hang off of things with randomly because you are the swashbuckler type. Yes, you as the knight in the armor and the shield will be covered with blood and gore as you wade into a horde of creatures, and that is your defense. You will put your shoulder against the door as the ravaging hordes come down there and try to break in and whatnot. You want to establish that tension and have it rise and rise and rise, and not be a rules lawyer and use that against the players, because I guarantee you, the more chances you have of your characters failing in something and not being the heroes of your story, the more they will fall back into roles where they will eliminate all chances of failure, start min-maxing, power gaming, and completely stifle any creative elements to make your game organic amongst everyone. So this is part 1. I'm still going to go through part 2. It's probably going to take me about 5 parts to do complete cinematic role-playing. But I hope this draws you in to want to listen to and view more of these. Thank you very much.